Hello guys, good afternoon. I think we can start already. Allow me to share my screen to you. Ayan. Start na tayo Sunod na lang yung mga iba. Okay. Clear yung audio natin guys. Verify ko lang.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. And so today we are tasked to have a lecture on human rights education. Mali pala yung na-discuss natin kahapon na pagbaliktad natin yung schedule. Instead of human rights kahapon, Leia yung na-discuss natin. Anyway, today we are going to be talking about the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, no? As a continuation of our subject, human rights education, no? So we're just going to have an overview with regards to the Universal Declaration on Human Rights. Now, it's very important that we should cover this because all of the references that we have, no, even our Philippine Constitution, no, the purpose of the existence of the Commission on Human Rights are all based on the so-called Universal Declaration of Human Rights. No? So lahat ng mga human rights resources natin are based on this Universal Declaration. So just an overview, no? With regards to the creation of the Universal Declaration on Human Rights. No? This was created post World War II. Yan. So the nations, no? The different nations, the different nations had convened together after the World War II. No? If we go back to the history, no, maalala natin that one of the most deadliest conflict between countries to countries, no, allies to allies, were the World War II. No? So if we're going to count ilan ang namatay doon, talagang malaki-laki. And it is noticeable, of course, that during that time, there has been a lot of human rights abuses. Ang daming nangyaring pang-abuso, no, during that time. And to include, of course, this was the time where the genocide of the Jews was done, no? The bombing of the on Japan was done. No, lahat ito are considered all as collateral in order to attain peace. I don't know if you agree with me, but all of those things are the things that we are paying, no? We should pay in order to have a peace and order. Kasi nga naman, kung hindi natapos ang gera during that time, that definitely baka half of the population of the world was already eliminated. No? So we are part of the war during that time. No, kasali tayo diyan. No? Japanese invasion, American and so on, all of those are during the World War II. So after the World War was already decided, no, kung ano nang nangyari after the World War, nagkaroon na tayo ng pagkakaisa, no? The member countries had convened together, no, in order to discuss not only the human rights but also other issues that might concern the security, the peace and security, and the different treaties that was enacted in the United Nations Convention. Okay, so the Universal Declaration on Human Rights was considered as a milestone. It's a milestone in human history, especially in the field of human rights, that finally, there is already a general understanding, or general understanding on what human rights is and why human rights should be respected. So the different member countries representing their own country and different cultural background convened together in order to draft the so-called Universal Declaration on Human Rights. Wherein nagkaroon na tayo dito ng tinatawag nating common understanding, no, by establishing a common standard, no, of achievements for all people and all nation in terms of human rights. Therefore, the product of such convention was then the pronouncement of the different articles under the Universal Declaration on Human Rights. So napakadaming nailathala dito. No? Actually, from the result of this convention, no, nagkaroon na tayo ng dito na kumbaga binase lahat ng mga meron tayong mga resources including the constitution of different countries that are member of the United Nations, no. Binase na nila yung provisions nila under human rights and so on sa ating sa dito sa Universal Declaration on Human Rights. Okay? Now, let us just talk about the preamble, ano? The preamble talks about the justification kung bakit nila ginawa, no? Itong human rights or bakit kailangan magkaroon tayo ng Universal Declaration on Human Rights, no? Pag sinabi kasi natin universal, no, there is this general, no, understanding on the basic concept of human rights, no. Kumbaga iisa yung magiging pananaw ng mga member countries on the what should be protected, what should be respected, and what should be prohibited, no. On the first paragraph of the preamble, it states here, no, the recognition of inherent dignity and of the equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family is the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace. In the word, that's absolutely true. No, we agree with this statement that respect for human dignity and human rights is really the foundation, no, of freedom, justice, and peace. We cannot say peace. No, you cannot talk about peace when there is no equality. No, hindi ka pwedeng magpalaganap o pag-usapan ng kapayapaan, no, kung wala namang tinatawag nating equality among the among human being. No, that's what Martin Luther King had been arguing in his speech. If you have heard about his speech, no? There is no peace and order if there is no equality among men. So they're just fighting against discrimination. But then here sa ating Universal Declaration, what the Universal Declaration on Human Rights is promoting is that first, let us respect each other's dignity, equality, rights, no? So as for us to understand or for us to achieve yung tinatawag nating freedom, justice, and peace. Unahin nating respetuhin ang bawat isa, ang karapatan ng bawat isa, bago tayo or bago natin makamit ang tunay na kalayaan, hustisya, at kapayapaan. That's what the paragraph 1 is stating, you know. Paragraph 2, we have here, whereas disregard and contempt for human rights have resulted in barbarous acts which have outraged the conscience of mankind, and the advent of a world in which human beings shall enjoy freedom of speech and belief and freedom from fear and want, no, has been proclaimed as the highest aspiration among common people. So basically, it's true again that when people, no, when human being will not receive the justice, no, that they are entitled to, no, kung hindi kasi nakukuha ng karaniwang mamamayan ang hustisyang kanilang sinisigaw, what will you expect then? No, magkakaroon tayo ng mga tinatawag nating barbarous actions, no, wherein people will either engage in terrorism, no, rebellion, and similar actions. Diba? If we remember the history of the establishment of the MNLF, why was it created? Just because the government failed to give justice to what they're fighting for. May pinaglalaban sila, nabigo silang makakuha ng makakamit ng hustisya sa gobyerno, kaya't ngayon sila ay bumuo ng sarili nilang grupo nang sa ganun ay lumaban, no? Armas sa gobyerno para sa kanilang pinaglalaban. So in order for us to avoid that, no, in order for us to avoid that, then there is a necessity indeed that the government shall respect all the rights entitled for all human being. No? Because we cannot afford to outrage, of course, the community, the society, the citizen of a certain country, which will then result into chaotic scenario, no? Chaotic situations which will endanger the peace and order of the country, no? If we are talking about a certain country, totoo po yan, no? Kaya't napakahalaga na dapat pahalagahan ng ating gobyerno, no, ang karapatan ng bawat isa, sapagkat kapag nababaliwala ang karapatan ng ordinaryong mamamayan, ay maaaring ito ang maging mitya para magkaroon tayo ng kaguluhan, no? And I'm pertaining to the existence of rebellion, no? And terrorism. Okay? So that's under the paragraph 2. Paragraph 3 talks about the essential, no? It says here that it is essential if a man is not to be compelled to have a recourse as a last resort. Anyway, that's the same as the previous paragraph that we discussed. No? If they will not be compelled, no? Kasi we believe that the reason why rebellion exists, the reason why people will engage into barbaric actions was sometimes because of the abuses committed by the government towards their citizens. Okay? Paragraph, I don't know what paragraph this is already. Whereas it is essential to promote the development of friendly relation between nations. Yan. So under this, it also promotes that the unification of different countries towards the positive purpose. No? Kailangang magkaisa, no, ang bawat bansa para nang sa ganon magkaroon tayo ng tinatawag nating world peace. No? After the World War II, no, the world has already witnessed, no, the most disastrous thing that could happen if there is no world, if world peace will not be attained. Kung patuloy na magkakaroon ng digmaang pandaigdig every now and then definitely there will come a time that human being will already cease to exist. So it's important that we should unify ourselves, no? Lahat tayo, let's just unify ourselves. Let us establish a certain rules, no, in everything, and that also involves the treatment of people, no, so as to attain the world peace that everyone's wanted. Lahat naman tayo nangangarap na magkaroon ng pandaigdigang kapayapaan, sapagkat kung ikaw ay nabuhay or namulat sa mga panahon ng giyera, ay malamang sa malamang ay hindi mo na nanaisin pang bumalik sa mga ganong sitwasyon. No? Next paragraph here, whereas the peoples of the United Nations have in the Charter reaffirmed their faith in the fundamental rights, in the dignity and worth of human person, and in the equal rights of men and women, and have determined to promote social progress and better standard of life in a larger freedom. No? So it justifies here that everyone joining the United Nations had recognized, no, the benefit, no, the impact of having the so-called unity or world peace for that matter. No? So napaka-importante, no, that every countries should know how to respect the human rights of their citizens, not only their citizens but also the other countries. No? Kasi wala rin. There will be no world peace if you only respect, of course, the human rights of your citizen but disregards the human rights of others. So kung tayo, no, kaya nga ang human rights is defined universally. Why? Because hindi pwedeng magkakaiba tayo ng pagkakaintindi under the concept of human rights. No? What might be our understanding in our country, if that is not the understanding of other countries, they could use that, no, to justify their action as an act that is considered as a not violation of human rights. So, kaya maraming ano kasi dito eh. Kung mapapansin natin during ngayon, 'di ba? Our current president is being called upon by the International Criminal Court for alleged human rights violations due to the war on drug, 'di ba? Kung naririnig niyo yung balita, ilang beses nang nababanggit na some countries had filed the case against the Philippines for alleged human rights violation due to the fact that there has been a lot of deaths that was recorded during the conduct of the war on drug by the current administration. No? So whether or not we can consider that really as a form of human rights violation, then that would be understood based on the on the proclamations of the United Nations on what is really human rights and what is a human rights violation. So napakahalaga that each and every member countries should show respect, no, to the dignity of a human being. Kaya tayo kaya nako-call up ang ating bansa when it comes to human rights violation because of this. No? They need to explain whether or not the deaths that was recorded during the World War are indeed a human rights violation or a legal, how do you call this? Action that a country would do in order to preserve its own security. Anyway, I think we move out naman na, no? Kumbaga, kubalas na tayo sa International Criminal Court. No? Ang International Criminal Court, usually kasi, that's when kapag merong gustong isampa ang isang bansa laban sa isa pang bansa, na kabilang sa tinatawag nating United Nations, diyan sila nagkikita, diyan sila nagsasampahan ng kaso. Remember our dispute with China, no? Our territorial dispute with China, no, kung saan is may sinampang kaso ang Philippines and other countries near the Pacific, etong sa Southeast Asia, no, hindi lang tayo, it's also Thailand, Indonesia, and so on, nagsipagsampa ng kaso against China because of their aggression towards the different territory that is under dispute, no? Under disputes. But then the problem there is that hindi naman kasi ganun ka-strict ang United Nations in implementing the decision of the International Criminal Court. So that's why I think the reason why President Duterte had decided to move out from the from that how do you call this, organization, no? So of course, we don't know all these stories behind this, no? But if that is the real case, then what can we do, no? That's the problem really sometimes, kasi even if there is already the so-called unification, but sometimes it's only on the paper and not in the reality, no? Next. Whereas member states have pledged themselves to achieve, in cooperation with the United Nations, the promotion of universal respect for the observance of human rights and fundamental freedoms. No? So we as a member countries have pledged that we shall honor, now we shall cooperate with the United Nations in promoting the so-called respect or universal respect and the observance of human rights. No? As again, there is no sanction under the declaration for human rights violation. Ito kasi under human rights, it is just prescribing, no? Kumbaga nagbibigay lang siya ng basihan, no? Ng guide para sa mga member countries kung ano dapat ang kanilang tignan, ano dapat ang kanilang pagtuunan ng pansin in terms of human rights and so on. But there is no sanction. Like for example, if one country violated human rights, what would be the sanction? It's not clear under human rights declaration what would be the sanction. So we cannot really call this as a law, no? But rather it is just a declaration, no? That is pwede naman nating sabihin na guidance only of what things should be followed and what things should be avoided. Na yun lang, nagiging guidance lang kasi siya. It's not like a law na kung saan if one member committed a human rights violation towards its citizen, siya ay papatawan na ganitong parusa. Wala naman. No? So it's a proclamation, it's a declaration, it guides the member countries on what should be taken into consideration and how should it be done. No? So yan ang malabo kasi dito sa ating sa United Nations, no? It's a organization only that unifies or unite the different countries who wanted to have a membership with the United Nations. Of course, para magkaroon din ng alliance, no? But para magkaroon na rin ng tinatawag nating recourse whenever there is a maltreatment or there is an abuse between countries to countries. Like for example, sabi ko nga, what happened in China, no? Sa mga ganung cases, kapag ikaw ay ina-exploit, inaabuso ng isang bansa, saan ka ba pupunta o tatakbo? You have the International Criminal Court. However, no, wala silang pangil when it comes to giving sanctions to countries that violates or that commit violations to the different rules and guidelines under the United Nations. No? Medyo mahirap yun. So with that, now the General Assembly proclaims that this Universal Declaration of Human Rights as a common standard of achievement for all people and all nations, to the end that every individual and every organ of the society, keeping this declaration constantly in mind, shall strive by teaching and education to promote respect for these rights and freedoms, and by progressive measures, national and international, to secure their universal and effective recognition and observance, both among peoples of member states themselves, among the peoples of territories under their jurisdiction. As you can see, under the proclamation of the General Assembly, it did not mention any sanctions for violation of human rights. That's the problem. That is the problem really here. No? What will be the recourse of the General Assembly or the United Nations in case there will be violations, in case there will be countries that would commit violations on the different declaration proclaimed under the United Nations General Assembly? No, it does not mention there. Okay? So that what the problem is, di ba? Alam naman natin, we are under criminology. If there is a rule, if there is a set of rules, no, you expect that there will be violations. So what will you do in order to get obedience, no? Hindi ko alam kung tama. Para mapilitan yung mga member na sumunod, no? Ano ang dapat gawin? No? Ano dapat ang gawin? Di magpataw tayo ng karampatang parusa para nang sa ganun ay matakot itong mga member countries na sumunod. However, that is missing. Yan yung kulang. doon sa ating mga declarations. Kasi sabi ko nga, declarations are not similar to law. No? Kasi under declaration, they only serve as a guide for other member countries, for the member countries, no? In creating their own laws, constitution, and so on. So the punishment will still be under the existing laws of the country. Whatever country that has, whatever country has jurisdiction over the violation that was committed, then magpapato ng parusa. But for UN, wala dyan. So yan, sabi niya, the different countries the different member countries should see to it that the declarations, the different articles under United Nations Convention shall be respected. Dapat nare-respeto. Ang mga mamamayan ay dapat na-educate on their different rights. So we have here the different article. We're just going to talk about the article 1 to 15 kasi medyo mahaba to. Kung papansinin natin, let's try to compare kung meron nga ba ito sa ating constitution. For example, Article 1. Ano ang nakalagay sa ating Article 1? All human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. They are endowed with reasons and conscience and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. So, Article 1 talks about equality and dignity among men. Pinanganak tayong tao, pare-parehas tayo, pantay-pantay. Meron dapat tayong pagkakapantay-pantay. Kaya dapat lamang na ang trato ng bawat isa, natin sa bawat isa ay makatao rin. Dahil pare-parehas at pantay-pantay lang naman tayo bilang isang human being. Is that present doon sa ating Philippine Constitution? Yes, meron yan. Kaya nga sabi ko, majority of the provisions, especially under the Bill of Rights of our Philippine Constitution, was based on this because that's the primary purpose of this declaration. Ito yung napag-usapan ng different member countries, and for us to have a universality, dapat ang Constitution, especially on the Bill of Rights, will be based on the Universal Declaration on Human Rights. Yan. Kung papansinin natin under Article 9, Section 1, Article 3 Bill of Rights of the 1987 Philippine Constitution, sabi naman dito, no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, and property without due process. So later, nandun pa rin yung tinatawag nating due process, on other article nga lang ng Universal Declaration natin. For Article 2 of the Universal Declaration on Human Rights, it states here that everyone is entitled to all the rights and freedoms set forth in this declaration, without distinction of any kind, and so on. So what the Article 2 is promoting here under the Universal Declaration on Human Rights is the prohibition against discrimination. That everyone is entitled to benefit from the full potential of this declaration. Kung ano man ang nakalagay dito sa Human Rights Declaration natin, lahat tayo ay dapat makinabang without respect to our race, color, sex, language, religion, and so on. Dapat pantay-pantay tayo. Lahat ng nakasaad dito ay mag-a-apply sa lahat ng tao, especially the member countries of the United Nations. So kasali tayo dyan. The rights that are entitled for American citizens, the human rights that they are enjoying, is also the same rights that we, Filipino citizens, should be enjoying. So dahil pare-parehas lang naman tayong tao, regardless of our classification, regardless of our race, regardless of our color, regardless of our language, the fact that we are still human being, then we are entitled to the full potential or full benefit of the United Nations Declaration on Human Rights. Okay? Article 3 that talks about the right to life, liberty, and security of person. As we have stated, we have that on the Philippine Constitution. Baliktad ang 1987 Philippine Constitution natin ang nag-base dito sa Universal Declaration on Human Rights. It's not otherwise. No? Baka sabihin nyo, ay, kaparehas yan ng ating Constitution. Baka ginaya tayo. Hindi. No? Kaya minsan sinasabi ang gaya-gaya ang Pilipinas. No, hindi naman sa literally gaya-gaya. It's because we are just adopting the proclamations under the United Nations. No? Kasi ang idea ng United Nations is to have, to unify, no, all the laws, no, all the different declarations. Hindi lang kasi naman ng human rights ang may declaration. May Magna Carta for Women din tayo. May declaration din tayo against children in conflict with the law. No? So, dapat pare-parehas. No? Para maging universal sana ang batas natin. Like, for example, if there is a prohibited act in America, it should also be prohibited here in Philippines. So as if there is a violation, kasi it's very complicated yung tinatawag nating transnational or border crime, no, or borderless crime. Wherein kapag ang isang krimen na nakomit sa kanilang bansa ay hindi krimen dito sa ating bansa, and we are not entitled to participate in the prosecution of that person, ano? So kung si Mr. John Doe, nag-commit ng crime doon sa Amerika, okay? Tumakbo siya sa Pilipinas, at yung kinumit na crime ni Mr. John Doe wala dito sa Pilipinas, hindi siya krimen. So, kumbaga, makakatakas siya. Why? Kasi hindi siya pwedeng i-persecute ng ating ng mga kapulisan for a crime that is not punishable in a country where he is residing under the treaties on law enforcement. No? So, it's very complicated to talk about those things. But that's the idea behind. No? Kaya nga, there should be a unification. No? Article 4, that's the prohibition against slavery or forced servitude or servitude itself. No? Slavery and the slave trade shall be prohibited in all their forms. Yan. So, we have a prohibition with regards to these things already. Kasi, before World War, no, it's common to see yung mga tinatawag nating slaves, no? Meron talagang mga slaves noon, especially in America pa mismo, no? Wherein the Black Americans are considered as slave, the Native Indians are considered as a slave, ini-slave sila ng mga white American and so on. So, even here in our country, ano, kung mapapansin nyo, may mga alipin-alipin din. May mga alipin-alipin tayong tinatawag. No? So, those things were already prohibited, no, under this declaration, because those are considered as a human rights violation. No? Pantay-pantay tayo. Hindi porket mayaman case you are already higher, no, than a certain person at pwede mo nang tratuhin bilang property or isang kasangkapan ang isang tao. That cannot happen. That's a blatant violation of the human rights of each and every individual. Walang pinanganak na slave, no? Every one of us, no, pagkapanganak natin, we are entitled of our own liberty, no, right to life, and we have our human dignity, tinatawag. Article 5 talks about the prohibition of the so-called torture or cruel, inhumane, or degrading treatment or punishment. Yan. So, we have a lot of cases wherein there will be yung mga tinatawag nating torture, no? Lalo na sa mga nakukulong, no? Lalo na sa mga nai-involve into crime. It's very common to see before the enactment of this, ano? Before the adaptation of this ng bansa natin, bago na-adapt ito, it's common na makakita tayong mga natotorture ng mga individual, no? Even if they are guilty of committing a crime, they don't deserve to be tortured or to be treated cruelly. cruel to be treated with cruelty, no? So as I've stated, we all have the rights as human being. Now we all have the dignity that must be honored by the state, no, and by the different uh, actors, no, violators against human rights. So that's Article 5. No? It talks about the prohibition against torture and cruel punishment or degrading treatment or punishment. So what can we do if there is something like that happening? We could recourse to our own criminal justice system. Pwede naman tayo magsampa ng kaso because not only that that's unconstitutional, no? Kung titignan natin yung ating constitution, ay meron din yan. So kapag merong mga ganyang nangyari, that's considered as constitutional rights violation, no? And we can file a case, no, against the actors of such behavior, such action. Article 6, everyone has the right to recognition everywhere as a person before law. Can we just discuss Article 6 and 7 because halos parehas lang naman sila. Article 6 talks about the recognition of general recognition everywhere of a person before the law. Article 7 talks about the equality before the law, no? And everyone is entitled without any discrimination to equal protection of the law. No? So what we are pertaining here is that discrimination in the eyes of the law should be prohibited. No? Dapat pantay-pantay. Dapat equal ang treatment to everyone, no? In the eyes of the law. Hindi porket ikaw ay mahirap is ikaw ay mas kumbaga mas marahas ang magiging kaparusahan mo unlike before, ano? Kasi kung titignan natin in our history, marami tayong mga cases wherein kapag ang isang tao, no, isang mahirap na nakit ng isang tao na nandun sa upper class, no, yung mga tinatawag nating dugong bughaw, kamatayan ng kanyang kaparusahan, no? Kapag naman ang isang dugong bughaw, ang isang mayaman, no, nasa taas, kumbaga nakapanakit ng ordinaryong mamamayan, no? Ang kanyang magiging kaparusahan lang ay either magmulta, no, or ma-exile, paalisin doon sa lugar. So, kita mo, yun yung mga examples natin na wala tayong fairness and equality in the eyes of the law. Bakit ganun ang treatment? Bakit pag ang isang mahirap na kapanakit ng mayaman, kamatayan agad ang parusa? Kumpara doon sa mga tao na mayaman na kapanakit ng mga dukha, no? Penalty lamang, no, multa lamang ang magiging kaparusahan. So yun yung isa sa inaalis natin, no, nung nag-declare na sila nung gumawa na sila ng tinatawag nating Human Rights Declaration. Hindi dapat ganoon ang treatment, no? Kasi lahat tayo, regardless of your status, no, regardless of your color, regardless of your gender, should be treated equally in the eyes of law in order for us to achieve yung tinatawag nating world peace, no? Okay? Next. Article 8. Under Article 8, sabi dito, everyone has the right to an effective remedy by the competent national tribunal for acts violating the fundamental rights granted by him, by the Constitution, or by the law. So yan nga yung sabi ko kanina, if there will be a constitutional violation, anong dapat natin gawin? If somebody, ako mismo, halimbawa, ay inabuso ang aking karapatan under the Philippine Constitution, ano yung dapat kong gawin? Ano yung pwede kong gawin para maipaglaban ang aking karapatan? That's why we have the Commission on Human Rights na sila dapat sila ang nangunguna, pagdating sa pagprotekta sa karapatan ng mga tao. Mahirap man o mayaman, dapat sila ang nangunguna sa pagsisiguro that lahat ng karapatan ng tao ay nirerespeto, no, ng lahat ng ahensya ng ating gobyerno, no, ng lahat ng mga pribadong individual, and so on. So dapat meron tayong remedy, no, whenever there is a constitutional violation, whenever there is a violation on the constitutional rights or the human rights, dapat we have a way of getting justice to our unfortunate experiences in terms of human rights violation. No? Yeah, so that's one of the primary function of the Commission on Human Rights that we have in our country, ano? Paglaban yung mga karapatan ng mga mamamayan, no, na naaabuso ang kanilang fundamental rights, ang kanilang constitutional rights, and so on. The only problem sometimes is that itong mga to ay nagagamit sa pamumulitika, no, which is very sad to admit, no? Kasi sometimes they're being used by some political parties in order to promote their own political agendas, which is in contradiction already with the purpose of the creation of such commission. Okay? Article 9, sabi dito, no one shall be subjected to arbitrary arrest, detention, or exile. No? Sa ating Philippine Constitution, malinaw na malinaw po yan. No? Meron tayong article under the Bill of Rights that secures us from any kind of illegal or arbitrary arrest, detention, or exile. No? Pag sinabi kasi nating arbitrary, it's mostly focused on the arrest committed by individuals who works with the government. No? Kasi that usually is yan yung common observation natin na yung mga nag-commit ng ganyan, syempre yung may mga katungkulan, ano? Kasi sila talaga, kumbaga they seem like to have the authority to do whatever they want since they are government employees. So, it is clear that here it prohibits the so-called arbitrary arrest, detention, or exile. No? Dapat hindi ganun. Kung ikaw ay aaresto, kung ikaw ay magkukulong ng isang tao, dapat it must be done with the benefit of the due process. Yan. So we discussed already due process. We're discussing the different rights that we have. Ano? So dapat may due process. Kung may maaresto, there must be a due process. Kung merong ma-detain, makulong, there must be a due process. Kung merong ma-exile, there must be a due process. Okay? Article 10. Everyone is entitled of full equality to a fair and public hearing by an independent and impartial tribunal in the determination of his rights and obligation and of any criminal charge against him. Yes. Do we have that on our constitution? Meron ba yan sa ating constitution? Definitely. No? We have an article, we have a section in our Bill of Rights that protect us from that. If I can remember that the impartial public trial, no, parang ganon. Yung nakalagay sa ating constitution. Na kung saan sinasabi niya na dapat lahat tayo ay merong karapatan na mabigyan ng tamang paglilitis, no? At hindi yung basta yan, Article 3 Section 16 pala yan. Sa atin naman, ang counterpart niyan, since we adopted some of the articles of the Human Rights Declaration, sa Constitution natin under Section 16, sabi dito, all persons shall have the right to speedy disposition of their cases before all judicial, quasi-judicial, or administrative bodies. So, isa yan sa, kumbaga is, pinoprotektahan na rin ng ating Constitution as mandated by the Declaration on Human Rights. Dapat malinaw na dapat magkaroon tayo ng fair and public hearing, by an independent and impartial tribunal. Kaya nga nahati-hati ng ating gobyerno, executive, judiciary, legislative. Yung mga hearing na yan, nasa judiciary yan. And they are a separate body, so they have the they have, kumbaga is, they are considered as a separate branch, so that makes them independent and impartial tribunal, no? They are not under the office of the president, they are not under the office of the legislation, no? So they are themselves an independent tribunal. Okay? Article 11, everyone charged with penal offense has the right to be presumed innocent until proven guilty. Yan. So do we have that? Do we have that? Yes, of course we have that. The presumption of innocence until proven guilty. In our Constitution, sabi din dyan that we all have the right to be presumed innocent until proven guilty. Ibig sabihin, hanggat hindi sinasabi ng korte na tayo ay guilty sa isang kasong isinampa, sa isang akusasyon na sa atin, ay tayo ay mananatiling inosente sa mata ng ating batas. No? Kaya't kung ikaw ay inosente sa mata ng batas, lahat ng karapatan mo bilang isang tao ay dapat nire-respeto at nandoon pa rin. No? What's our basis on that? Article 11. United Nations Declaration on Human Rights. And 1987 Philippine Constitution. No? Kaya pag ikaw ay pinaparusahan, sabi mo, bakit mo ako pinaparusahan? I'm not yet guilty. Sir, paano nakita mo harap-harapan nag-commit na ng crime? Even. No? Even. Why? Because we need to know the exact story. Why? Kasi sabi ko nga, hindi porket nakita mo si Mr. Pedro, no, sinasaksak si Mr. Juan, ay ibig sabihin, si Mr. Pedro ay guilty of a crime. Like homicide. Malay mo nga, sabi ko, self-defense. No? Malay mo, ibang kaso yan. So, we should, the presumption of innocence is not only present in our Constitution, but also in the Declaration on Human Rights. Kaya, kayo, lalo, pag kayo naging pulis na, no? Remember that everyone is innocent until proven guilty. Hindi ikaw ang magsasabi na si Pedro ay guilty of the crime, homicide or murder. Now, it's not you're not in the position to do that. No? Kailangan mo nang magkaroon ng trial, public trial, kailangan may due process, and kailangan tayong may pronouncement from the court, from the tribunal, that indeed Mr. Pedro is guilty of the crime before he will be treated as criminal. No? Until then, he is still presumed innocent. That's the same thing also under Article 11, Paragraph 2. No one shall be held guilty of any penal offense on account of any act or omission which did not constitute a penal offense under national or international law at the time when it was committed. We are talking about the retroactivity of a law, no? Ex post facto law, no? Which is the limitation of the criminal law that we have. Hindi pwede ang isang batas ay magparusa, no, ng isang bagay na hindi pa naman krimen nung ito ay nagawa. So halimbawa ngayon, no, hindi naman bawal, no, kumbaga, ngayon sana, no? Sabihin natin, ngayon sana, we have the pandemic, hindi naman bawal ang lumabas ng bahay upang magtrabaho. Okay? Pero, later on, gumawa sila ng batas na nagbabawal na sa paglabas ng bahay ng walang paalam kahit para magtrabaho. So, pwede ba akong balikan ng batas na yan? Kasi kahapon lumabas ako, no, ng bahay. Yung batas na yan, nagawa lang ngayon. Pwede ba yun? No, that is not valid. Under the Universal Declaration on Human Rights, hindi dapat ganun. Wala dapat tayong batas na nagpaparusa sa isang gawa, no? Na kung saan nung ito ay ginawa o ito ay nangyari ay hindi pa naman pinaparusahan. As I've stated, the case of Haydenco for example, no, na kung saan is kinukuhanan niya ng video ang pakikipagtalik niya sa iba't ibang lalaki, iba't ibang babae, no, na hindi alam ng babae, okay? So sinampahan siya ng kaso for that. But unfortunately, no, wala pa tayong batas na nagbabawal sa ganun, no? Hindi naman pwedeng rape yun kasi nga kusa naman na pumayag si babae na makipagtalik, no? Hindi naman child abuse yun kasi hindi naman mga minor de edad yung mga yun, no? Wala naman silang mga asawa, so hindi rin pwedeng concubinage or adultery and so on, no? Hindi rin naman pwedeng pornography kasi according to Haydenco, hindi naman siya ang nagpakalat ng video na yon at wala naman siyang intensyon na ipakalat ang video na yon. So what else is left? Anong krimen yun? So with that, no, yung ating legislative branch created the law. Gumawa sila ng batas na nagpaparusa doon sa mga ganong action. That's the Anti-Video, Anti-Photo and Video Voyeurism Act. So nagawa na yung batas na yan. Ngayon, pwede bang balikan ng batas na yan si Haydenco since siya yung kauna-unahan, no, na sinampahan ng kaso na ganon. At nung ginawa niya yon, wala pa naman yung batas na yan. So the answer is that no, hindi niya pwedeng balikan. No, hindi pwedeng pabaliktad or pabalik, no, ang pagparusa ng isang batas because that would be unfair, no? That would be very unfair. Okay? So that is what Article 11 paragraph 2 is pertaining to. Okay? Next. Article 12. Article 12, no one shall be subjected to arbitrary interference with his privacy, family, home, or correspondence, nor to attacks upon his honor and reputation. Everyone has the right to the protection of the law against such interference or attacks. Do we have that under our Constitution? Meron ba tayo niyan sa ating Constitution? Did we adopted that specific provision? Yes, we did. No? So that can be found on the what section? Tignan lang natin kung anong section yan. Yan, Section 3. Under Section 3 of the 1987 Philippine Constitution, Article 3, privacy of communication and correspondence shall be inviolable except upon lawful order. Paragraph 2, any evidence obtained in violation of this or the preceding section shall be inadmissible. So that is the adaptation of our Constitution to the Article 12 of the Declaration on Human Rights, which is very good of course. No? Kasi lahat tayo, meron tayong right to privacy na tinatawag. So hindi dapat nila pakialaman ng sino man ang ating personal na buhay. No? Kung yan naman ay hindi naman nagva-violate ng batas at hindi naman nakakasama sa peace, sa security or sa interest ng ating community, ng ating bansa, no? So we are protected against any unlawful searches or seizures and so on as stipulated under the 1987 Philippine Constitution. Article 13 of the United Nations Declaration on Human Rights, everyone has the right to freedom of movement and residence within the borders of each state. No? May karapatan tayong lumabas, pumasok sa kahit anumang bansang naisin natin. No? Everyone has the right to leave the country, to leave any country including his own, and to return to his country. Yan. Do you know a country na kung saan they are not honoring Article 13 of the Human Rights Declaration? North Korea. Yan. Yung mga nandoon, are they entitled of the right to leave their country? and return in their country whenever they wanted to? Are they allowed to move freely, no, or live whenever they want, no, in in whatever part of that country? Wala. Why? That's blatantly a human rights violation, no? But what's happening? Bakit nahahayaan lang? It's because they are not a member of the UN. No? So dami ng human rights sanctions wala nga silang magawa doon, ano? If the United Nations is really serious in defending the human rights of each and every individual, each and every human being, that therefore they should do something about the cases in North Korea. 'Di ba? Dapat gawan nila ng paraan yan if they are really serious. Kasi ang daming human rights violation doon. Na Article 13 is one. Marami pa dyan. No? Article, lahat, halos, no? Ng article of the human rights are being violated in that country. What are, ano pa? Ano pang country yan? No? Marami pa. Okay? We have also, tingnan natin, next. 14 and 15. Wala. Wait lang. Article 14. Everyone has the right to seek and enjoy in other countries asylum from persecution. The right may not be invoked in the case of prosecution genuinely arising from non-political crimes or from acts contrary to the purpose and principles of the United Nations. So, asylum, no, usually is happening when, for example, Taliban, no, there is a conflict in Afghanistan. There is a conflict that's happening there. So, yung mga residents, yung mga citizens nila are moving out from their country, leaving their country to go into other countries. Doon sila tumira, especially kung hinahabol sila ng mga teroristang Taliban, no? So they have the right to seek asylum, ano? Karapatan nilang maghanap, magtago sa ibang bansa para nang sa ganun ay maprotektahan yung kanilang karapatan, no? For example, North Korea again. Anong nangyayari kapag ang isang citizen ng North Korea nakalabas doon, nakatakas, no? Pupunta yan sa mga bansa na kung saan is siya ay bibigyan ng protection against the persecution of the North Korean administration, no? So that is with regards to that. And that is only applicable if, no, ang dahilan kung bakit siya hinahabol is not because of a crime, no? It's not because of a crime. Kasi kung halimbawa nag-commit ka ng crime sa bansa mo, nagtago ka sa ibang bansa, that is not a valid excuse, no, para magtago ka or para protektahan ka ng bansang 'yan. They will not protect you for that, no? Only if the reason for the persecution is like, for example, non-political crimes or not considered as a crime, no, and it's not against the principle of the United Nations, doon ka pwedeng tulungan ng mga member countries. But if that is blatantly a crime that you committed and you're trying to hide in other country, that kasalanan yan, no? At hindi ka kumbaga tutulungan ng member countries ng United Nations to from the persecution coming from your country. No? Yan. Article 15, that's the last one. We'll just have a continuation over this. Everyone has the right to a nationality. No one shall be arbitrarily deprived of his nationality nor denied the right to change his nationality. So, karapatan natin yan. If you wanted to change your nationality, that's your right. Karapatan mo yan. So, kung gusto mo, halimbawang magpa-American citizen ka na, that is okay. That is one of your rights as a human being to do whatever you wanted, no? And if you want to change your nationality, as long as you are following the law, as long as it is in accordance with the law, then therefore you have the right to do it. Ngayon, gusto mo na namang maging Pilipino, no? Gusto mo na namang bumalik sa Pilipinas at magbalik ka na naman sa nationality mo, hindi pwedeng sabihin ng bansa natin, no, hindi na, no? Kasi ikaw, nagpalit ka ng nationality, ngayon gusto mo na namang bumalik. We will deny you of your right to change nationality. Hindi pwede yun. So kahit ilang beses kang magpapalit-palit ng nationality, karapatan mo yan. And the countries involved has no rights to deny you or deprive you of such right. As long as, sabi ko nga, it is not in conflict with the interests of the host country. Okay? So, those are some of the article under Human Rights Declaration. That's Article 1 to 15. Now, I cannot be able to discuss everything kasi medyo mahaba. So, if you have questions with regards to the things that we discuss, you are free to ask. Meron ba kayong tanong?
Wala naman, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Pa-screenshot nga yung ano natin, then pasend na lang sa GC for documentation purpose only. Ayun, okay na guys? Okay, so if there are no more questions then, thank you very much guys for attending. Pasensya na kahapon, dalito ako. Inuna kong diniscuss yung isang subject natin. Nagkabaliktad tayo ng schedule. Pero ayun, at least na-discuss pa rin naman natin ngayon yung topic natin. So, sorry for that. Okay? If there are no more questions then guys, thank you very much for attending. I do hope I was able to impart knowledge with regards to the topic that we discussed. That's it for today. See you guys on the next lecture. Bye-bye.
God, what kind of
Thank you, sir.
lecture is
Bye.
that?
Sir.
Thank you, sir.
Already
Thank you.
killed.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye, sir.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir. Bye.